everyone. Welcome into ESPN FC Live. We are with you 3 times a week on Tuesdays, Wednesdays and Fridays. It's always great to have you with us here on our YouTube channel. Kay Murray, Janusz, Michallik and Dalen here. For your most recent edition, we'll be talking PL Express. Lots of Premier League talk today. Top 4 battle, title race. We'll also be talking about what's going on with Spurs. Then I've got some questions for the boys as well. I'm going to pick their brains on a few things. And we'll be bringing up an extra time question from the ESPN FC nightly show that we thought was interesting and we wanted to put to our panel today. So great to have you with us, guys. Let's get started with PL Express then and talk about, well, we were asking on ESPN FC, if we're calling this a turnaround for Manchester United, it's 15 points from the last 18 available in the Premier League. That are 6 points off Arsenal. I want the stats in a minute from you, Dalen, if I can, when it comes to what we're looking at in the top 4 race and even the title race with this side right now. But in terms of a title race, Janusz, what would it actually take for this side to mount a title race? Can we actually look at them for that right now?
I would take another couple of windows, transfer windows. I mean, it's just not going to happen. This is not a good enough, talented team that's not talented enough, I should say. Apologies. But look, I mean, in the meantime, they're winning games, right? 5 out of 6 in the Premier League. Not always great, not against great teams, but it doesn't matter, right? Because as we know, it's supposed to win the games that you can win, and I think they're doing that. So I think that we have an issue with what you just said in a way that we need to differentiate between United team that is now the reality of the United team that fans want, or we want, that we remember, and that's an issue. But in the meantime, to get to that level, you have to put away the drama, and I think that's what Manchester United are doing. I don't know if I saw it coming in a way, because they snuck up on us, didn't they? Right? I mean, when I saw this, I almost forgot that they've won 5 out of 6. I really have, because the level of play, the way they've been winning these games. I mean, look at this last game. I mean, they could have easily lost that game if it's not for a great goal very early in the game. I mean, Calvert-Lewin had 2 or 3 very good chances. Idrissa Gueye had another 2. Doucouré had a great chance. I mean, if I look at the chances, probably, and trust me, I actually didn't look it up. Maybe Everton had better chances than Manchester United in this, and yet they've lost 3-0. So this is the sort of thing that you go through the season where you keep yourself alive. You put away the drama, even if it's for 3 or 4 or 5 games, or even if it's just for 1, because, you know, Manchester United are going to Turkey against Galatasaray. I mean, that could be a game where they lose 2 or 3-0 once again, and who knows how that affects them as well. So I think it's just, you know, that build where you start believing that the players that are coming back are making a difference. Luke Shaw, not that he played great, but you could kind of sense it that he was good, right? Kay and Don, we were watching Manchester United here in the United States, and we saw Kobe Mainu, didn't we? I mean, he was very, very good. Then an injury, and all of a sudden he comes back and reaffirms what we knew, that he's a very good, young, talented player. And he walked into this game as if nothing happened. So those are the positives. And I think if you're Manchester United, you got to build on that. So top 4, possible. I mean, you know, it's impossible to win the league.
Yeah, you were smiling away there, Dalen, when you said 2 more windows at least for that.
Yeah, I mean, right now the odds are, for people to know on ESPN Bet, they're 80-1, which is just a monstrous long shot. That's 7th favorite in the Premier League, and I would contend if their name was not Manchester United, they'd probably be 100-1. You still have to bake in the fact that it's one of the biggest clubs in the world, and people will see that number and still throw money at it. On the off chance it has to happen, books have to, you know, protect themselves a little bit by going too crazy, but 80-1 is pretty crazy. I do want to say one thing about Garnacho's goal real quick. I think we can get jaded in this business of always we have a great job. We get to watch games across the world and talk about them. But we got done doing an ESPN bet show. We're talking about betting and stuff in the United States, and I'm about to do some college basketball shows on Sunday. I sit down and I literally open up my iPad to put the Everton United game on, and as my butt hits the seat, that goal goes in, and I just shot out of my seat. Like that kind of reaction doesn't happen often, but it was like that was so insane. And like the moment that I realized, like, oh my God, I'm on my feet, like cheering a goal that, and let's be honest, I don't like United, but that was just an insane finish that you're just not going to see. That's like an all-time finish. Now, all that said, which is really cool, them winning the title, it's not going to happen. And Janusz said the same thing. I think we've all said it snuck up on us that they've won 5 out of 6, because within that mix, beyond international breaks, we've had them crapping out of a cup competition 3-0 to Newcastle. losing Champions League games at home to Galatasaray 4-3. That stuff gets kind of baked into the narrative as we're talking about these games. Now they are beating Luton Town and Sheffield United, and I think Brentford is their only win in that run above teams above 14th in the table. So that doesn't matter. To Janus's point, you're winning games, but it becomes surprising when you have these other mixed-in failures, a lot of drama off the pitch, and then you're beating teams you're supposed to beat. So we maybe don't credit you as much as you're going along. They're in a better run of form. They're plus 450 to get in the top 4. That's behind Newcastle, who's plus 160. Newcastle plus 160. Spurs is plus 200. Villa's ahead of them as well in that ranking if you look at it too. So that's 4.5 times your money. I wouldn't take that bet. I still don't think they're going to make it in the top 4 in the end. I think there's too many frailties, too many issues that still could bubble up through the course of the season. They're in a nice run of form right now, but I'm not taking that plus 450. I think there could be. I like Newcastle, especially if Newcastle craps out of the Champions League and gets in 4th in that group. That bet becomes even better to me if they don't have to play in any European competition. So that's where that stands in my mind right now.
I'll take that bet on the 4th spot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Plus 450, Janusz. Throw that money in there. Go ahead.
Get it in there, Janusz, especially with as you said, the quiet creeping up. So let's talk some of the positivities, and we'll go back to Garnacho's goal as well. I love that the butt off seatometer. I think that's what we can go by, and I think everyone was off the seat with that goal. But let's start with some of the positives. As I said, Janusz, one thing is Bruno Fernandess. Lots of questions as to whether he was captain material for this side, but we saw a very special moment in this game where he, as a regular penalty taker, said to Marcus Rashford, you can take it. Obviously, Marcus Rashford's been on a goal drought. What did you make of this? Did you think it showed his leadership skills, or did you think it was a risk?
No, it wasn't a risk. I don't know if it was leadership. I mean, obviously, with all the buzz in the press, I mean, it was a good opportunity, I suppose, if that's what he did. I don't want to be cynical about that. I do believe that maybe he wanted to get Marcus Rashford going because he's such an important player who had such a great season last year and is misfiring right now. So I truly believe that somewhere in there. And by the way, we never know. I mean, Rashford could have come over and said, listen, give it to me. I need it badly. It's one of those things where Bruno perhaps thought that he was going to take it. So I think sometimes we look into it a little bit too deeply. It came out the way it came out. He scored, and Bruno looks good in the process. And yes, that's what captains do sometimes. But I'm not even 100% sure if he meant it that way, because I tell you, I would have asked him if I were in a position of Rashford, I would have gone over and say, I need it badly. And if it was me, I would have given it to him.
So there's a drought broken, but let's get to Garnacho's goal. It definitely got Dalen's butt out of his seat that had just sat back in his seat. What about you, Janusz? Is it like when you're talking about this goal, I even saw in some of the English media saying, is this the Premier League goal ever scored? But is it the best in recent memory for you?
I mean, everybody's comparing the Rooney one to Garnacho, right? And it's like picking who you love more, your mom or your dad, right? One of those things. But I think Rooney's. I mean, if I had to decide between the two, for me, Rooney's is more difficult one. And they're both beautiful, and you look at the distance and you say Garnacho, but I think that I mean, power's in the cross and it's coming at you, which is always easier. I remember Nani's ball, where it's coming from behind, when you have to make the cleanest of contacts, because it's not easy to adjust a ball that's coming with a little bit of a spin in from behind. It's much easier to the way the ball was passed to him. So I like that one. Not to mention there was Manchester Derby. It's 2-1, and a lot of people make so much of the fact that he had to readjust and take 2 steps back. I actually think that helped him a little bit. So I mean, both are absolutely beautiful. I mean, if I had to decide on one because my life depended on him, I actually think that Rooney's is better.
All right then. Let's talk about
more difficult for me.
That's it. That's interesting. I mean, the technical breakdown of it, I've heard what you saying, and I've heard some other guys, the former players, and I'm not going to step in that space because I've never made a bicycle kick like that, so I ain't going to act like I have. What I will say is
neither have I.
Well, I guess not many have. The place and time does matter. I mean, playing in the Manchester Derby, that's a big time thing. And I will say this too. I don't know if they run the same ads in the States that they run across the world. That Rooney goal has been in a Barclays ad for the last 10 years, and it runs in games. It runs in random other NBC is the partner that owns it here. Other properties they have, that goal has become iconic, and because also it is Wayne Rooney, a future England captain at the time, I believe. So you have all these different elements in that goal. The Garnacho goal was it was a shocker. I do think just watching where it was coming in and how he adjusted his body, it was bananas. And it's not that you expect that from Rooney, but he's Wayne Rooney. It's a little different than when Garnacho, a young guy, makes that kind of play, who's shown, it fits and starts this year, quality, but that was a whole different level. Real quick on go ahead.
No, I'm just saying a ball coming from behind is much, much tougher than a ball that's coming, from the front of you. That's just simple techniques. And again, I don't want to take it away from Garnacho.
Real quick on the Bruno Fernandess thing, Kay, I do think it's interesting. Like with leadership, part of being a good leader is taking risks. Like those things are not inherently mutually exclusive. So I think it's strange when people say, well, is it a risk or is it? Because I feel like that conversation has been part of it. Like, did he put his team at risk? Well, yeah, that's sometimes as a leader, you got to take some gambles, take some guesses, and you have to imbue your team or your company or your partners with confidence. And that's what I think he was doing there. If in fact, to Janusz's point, it was, if he went that way and said to Rashford, go ahead, or even if Rashford said to him, you're still saying, I believe in you, because it's a 1-0 game right there. And to Janusz's point, if you look at the expected goals, they were really close. Like that, like Everton should have scored at least once. That game should have been different if they put away some of their chances. So that was on knife's edge. It wasn't like early in the year with Arsenal when Kai Havertz was really struggling, and obviously we'll get to him in a little bit. But they gave him the ball in a game where they were destroying Sheffield United, I think, and they gave him, it was up 3-0 or something. Like it was a pointless, not pointless. It had value for Kai Havertz, but it did not put any question in the result of the match. This was different, and that's why I think there was some risk in that, but in that does show some leadership and does show some confidence building in your team.
And Rashford, and just to add quickly, Rashford is a very good penalty taker. So
true, yeah.
Okay, well, let's talk about Spurs and what's been going on with them, because there's a question as to whether they've been regressing, whether they're losing steam, whether they're running out of steam, especially with the injuries that have been piling up as well. That's now 3 straight Premier League defeats, Janusz. What do you think of it? Is this a drop-off?
Well, it is. But remember, on one of the very first few shows, I talked about what happens if James Maddison is out. Now look at the amount of type of players that are out in this one. So it's no coincidence. That's just reality. Reality bites. And it's also not a coincidence. It happened in that Chelsea game that had so much controversy and a lot of injuries for them, a couple of red cards, if I remember. So, this is a consequence of that in a way, that certain things it's difficult to fill in, even though Ange, I think, has done a tremendous job. And in that game, should have won it very, very easily. So I think that he's got a lot of credit in the bank already, Ange Postecoglou, and I think the fans are enjoying it. I think that obviously it's a drop-off, but let's be honest. Nobody expected a start like that. I mean, if they lost a couple games early on, nobody would have said anything. We'd be here talking about Ange Postecoglou without Harry Kane changing the team. He needs a little bit of time. It's process, right? But because he started unexpectedly well, now all of a sudden we think he's going to be winning every game. And I think, when I look at this team and the decisions he made ahead, playing such an attacking lineup without so many players, sticking to his guns and his philosophy, I think it's wonderful. He's bought into the defense mentality, because they'd much rather come to the stadium and even maybe lose a game like this, but playing like that. Remember, I mean, they had Jose Mourinho and Antonio Conte, who, both managers bored the entire stadium to death. The results weren't there anyway, even though those two are serial winners. So at least you can say to yourself, wow, look at the way we're playing when we're missing more than half the team or starting lineup. That's
what it felt like, didn't it, Janusz, with him afterwards as well? He just didn't seem too down at all about what he'd seen from his side in this loss. Like, obviously, going back to the Chelsea loss, as we discussed right here, couldn't really take too much away from that, given the sendings off. The Wolves one, maybe you could pick apart a bit more. But in this one, the feeling was from Ange Postecoglou that he wasn't upset with what he'd seen from his sides.
Well, absolutely, because some of the goals, all those disallowed goals, a couple of them, the buildup was absolutely tremendous. And so obviously, whatever he's doing on the training pitch, it doesn't really matter who's in the starting lineup. Players are buying into that philosophy. They understand it so quickly. because we'll talk about Pochettino or Chelsea. Look how quickly they bought into it. I mean, we sometimes sit here and we think that playing like this is just comes now. You can just say a couple of sessions, you're going to do it. How many examples we have? How long it's taken Mikel Arteta or even Pep Guardiola to agree to accomplish that? And he's accomplished a way of playing that everybody understands. That's beautiful to watch. That's why we turn into for entertainment. And so I can understand how even Spurs fans can kind of overlook it, because there's always that hope, thinking when we come back, when we get the players, we can return to that. And yes, Spurs haven't won in ages, so waiting maybe another season to win something significant or make it to the top four in the way that they play, if they continue to play, this is real hope that came up. Look how quickly. It's quite incredible, to be honest with you, what I saw in that last game.
Let's get the facts then, Dalen, on how much their stocks dropped when we look at ESPN Bet.
Well, it hasn't really gone down as far as I thought, to be very honest with you. They're plus 200 to make it into the top four, and that's right behind Newcastle, plus 160. But the next team behind them is Manchester United at plus 450, and United's only 2 points behind. What I find really interesting, and I had a little technical thing there, I missed part of what Janusz said there. I know he started with if they lose Maddison. And of course, with him being out, that team is different. That Chelsea game, I think when we look back months from now, and when you talk to Spurs fans, because there's just boiling with negativity all the time and pessimism. I feel like I talked to like 5 Spurs fans after that match. And they're like, we're going to look back at the Chelsea game. That's going to define our season. It very well may be, because not the loss, all the bodies that kind of fell within the course of that physical match. And if Maddison, his absence, Van der Ven's absence is a problem. But what I find interesting is the books have not responded the way I would have thought. And what that says to me, and a little bit to Janusz's point there at the end, they have a true style of playing. And I think that when you do that, you have an understanding of what this team can be anticipated doing long-term with or without their key guys. Will they win enough games to get in the top four? Maybe. It's obviously a bet, but one that the books think is more likely than a United team that, while they're getting results in the league, still in terms of their desire and how they want to play and having like an ethos and this is what we're going to be, I still don't really know what that is. And even Erik ten Hag a couple of weeks ago saying like, we can't play the way I want to play because we don't have the guys that I would like, essentially paraphrase his comments. That's interesting to me. And I think the line is very interesting too. That's a huge delta, plus 450, 4.5 times your money to 2 to 1 on your money for a club that United is a bigger brand name worldwide, which draws in more money. And Spurs, a team that many people assume will find a way to fail. Being Spursy is a term for a reason. But that is interesting to me. And I think that's part of that's Ange Postecoglou, part of that's the belief his guys have shown and how they're going to play. So maybe there's a predictive way of saying we have a better feel, at least the sports books, of how this team will perform versus a United team that seems like the delta between the up and down is very, is huge.
Let's bounce around then with what's going on at the top of the table, given the fact that we've just seen City take on Liverpool. Don't need to recap the game so much here, Janusz, but what's your biggest takeaway? What did we learn?
I still think that Manchester City are the best team in the league. I think in the first half, even though Liverpool had looks, and by the way, I mean, when Manchester City play against anybody, you're always there's an inherent risk the way they play. But you could see how much Liverpool struggle coming out of the back. Some of the Alisson mistakes, are on him, but the pressure. I mean, they had 10 players in Liverpool's half, and Liverpool really didn't know how to come out. Of course, they broke a couple of times. They had some looks, no questions about that, which is going to happen. We saw Manchester City against Chelsea that, at times that risk is not going to pay off. But a massive point for Liverpool, who, by the way, I think a lot of the key players didn't play well. They got something at a ground that they normally don't get, at least recently, don't get much out of. So it's massive, but it doesn't change anything for me in terms of what I think of Manchester City now that the international breaks are over, now that they're going to be able to rotate the way they rotate. I look at Pep Guardiola, who has a plan B, C, D, E, and F, at least in the back, even though he didn't go to his bench because he truly didn't trust it. There's a couple players, in a game like this that he doesn't trust yet. They haven't earned his trust, and I can understand that. But as for sure, when they get going, I think play like Kovacic or Nunez, they'll get going because the team is going to be playing so well that they'll fill in and they'll want to get their minutes and continue to play well. I don't even want to mention Kevin De Bruyne. So in all, you look at it, 2 draws for Manchester City and still absolutely 0 worries on my part. It's going to be interesting. And yeah, I may be wrong for a few weeks, but I think ultimately, I think we know where this is going to end up.
Did it change anything title odds wise, Dalen, this game?
Not really. I mean, City's still a prohibitive favorite, minus 160. So that means you have to bet $160 just to win 100 on your money, based on what the books think this team is going to do. Now, granted, earlier in the year they were at 130, minus 135. Before the season, one of the best bets I thought in Europe was them at minus 125. And to Janusz's point, nothing has changed for me, and that's unfortunate to say, as we know I'm on this show. I'm a Gunners supporter, and they are currently top of the table. But what we've seen from City in the past is the fact that they're able to, when they hit January, they can go on. They did it last year. You go on these runs where they're flawless in the hardest league in the world to not drop a point. They've done it before, and I think they're capable of doing it again. And as they get healthier, and to Janusz's point, the international breaks go away. I know December with the clutter of fixtures can be a little challenging, but as you get to January and February, and the cream usually rises to the top, and they are the cream of the league. And I do think at least this year they will be more competitive down the stretch. I like to believe that Liverpool will be in the mix. I obviously want to believe Arsenal is in the mix. When you look at the betting line for the team to finish second, essentially you can bet, without Man City, that's a bet. You're basically looking who's going to finish in second. Arsenal's currently minus 105, so that's almost even money. And Liverpool's plus 135, so you're getting a little value there. So the books think Arsenal is the team in pole position. And why I think that's accurate, and I don't just want to believe it as a fan, is the fact that Arsenal still hasn't played that well. They haven't really hit a groove, and if they ever do, I think they're capable of ripping off some victories. But obviously there's some key people on that team. If Saliba goes down like he did last year, that team and the defense has been very solid, is going to be very different. So I think there's a lot of questions to be asked. I do think Arsenal's still the second favorite to finish in that position, but it's going to be a 3-horse race to keep it at least entertaining and competitive down the stretch. Ultimately, though, I just don't think either one of those teams are capable of holding on to City at the same level.
So give me a quick second then, Dalen, just because you are the Arsenal super fan. What did you make of what we saw from Kai Havertz in this game? Very important moment for him.
It was huge, and I don't want to pile on and say finally, but it's just you want the young man to perform. It's just, I hope this helps him grow in confidence, because whether it was going back to, and I've mentioned this before, being at the United game in early September, there were times where he would get on the ball and you could see space in front, and he would continue to play lateral or backwards, and you're almost hearing the fans kind of push him forward, like want to believe in it, and then it starts to get negative as you get later into the game, and we've seen it in the course of the year as a lack of belief in himself, and I think it's reciprocal to the fans. So he comes on, and granted, I don't care how much money you paid for him, comes on as a sub, scores that goal, a huge goal in the 89th minute. I think that lets him breathe a little bit easier. Hopefully he can continue to grow and build himself into confidence. I think when you see him play, especially when he's younger and playing in Germany, he's a good footballer, period. He's a good player. And anybody you talk to that's been around training there, like, those guys know he's really good because they're watching in training. Can he manifest that when they actually matters in the matches within a 90 minutes, or if he even gets 30 minutes, is the question. But him scoring a goal was important. That win was huge. And we hope that he can continue to build and just be, growing through the course of the year. And maybe that pressure alleviates a little bit, but that was a huge goal, to say the least.
Janusz, your response on the Arsenal and Havertz talk?
Well, Havertz, let's be happy for him. That's about it. You know how players feel. So, we've had fun at his expense, so we got to give him credit. For Arsenal, it's kind of funny because you say they haven't played well. I almost think it's part of that process. I hate to sound like Arteta, but I kind of like what I saw, because they are more predictable. Yes, some teams have figured out how to double down or double up on Saka and Martinelli, and Martinelli's suffering. Saka's still a very, very good player, but he's figuring out maybe Rice that he should be playing in a central role. Defensively, they're the best team. Offensively, they're still pretty good right now, and they kind of learning how to win games in a different way while not having the best players together at all times. I think that's important. The one thing that I would say about Arteta is that, for me, he's created an unhealthy competition in the goalkeeping department, and he needs to fix that. Okay, I know he knows that Reyes is number one, but Ramsdale, I'm not even talking about mistakes, but that's part of that. I think there are a lot of players in that dressing room that probably quietly talking to themselves, saying, maybe they are in Ramsdale's corner, because they're saying, look what he's done for us last season. He's been absolutely outstanding. Maybe they feel that he doesn't deserve that treatment. And I've been part of those dressing rooms where I'd be saying, look what's going on. So I just think that he's got to He's got to quickly figure this out and fix that, because even though statistically, as I've said, defensively they're fine as goalkeepers, I think many can point out towards what they've done, but I think inside the dressing room, that's something that may at times bubble up, and I don't think they need it. And they're top of the league, and by the way, deservedly, because I like the way they win games sometimes where they're not on the front foot.
Okay. Well, real quick, Janusz, I don't disagree with that. I think that's the positive. I think that's the belief that, like, hey, if these guys actually start to play and click in a way that we kind of expected, and the difference was last year is like, I don't think they can sustain this. There was like, could they ever sustain that level of play? And that was the question. This year, it's like, well, they have another level to get to, but they remain at the top of the table. That's why I do think it will be a competitive down the stretch.
Gotcha.
And that's exactly what we want. Guys, we're going to get you to play manager now. I'm going to give you a list of midfielders, and you get to pick 3 for your midfield, like a fantasy midfield. Now, yes, Janusz, Rodri is on the list, but no, you can't pick him 3 times. So here is the list for you. I'll start with you, Dalen. We'll just get you to name the 3 that it is. We've got Bruno Fernandess, Dominic Szoboszlai, James Maddison, Rodri, Enzo Fernandez, and Declan Rice.
I love Rice. I think he's probably the second best player in the world in his position. Unfortunately, Rodri's the best player in the world at that position. So I'm going to go Rodri, first in kind of like that 6 role. Szoboszlai, I think his ability to come into this league and the way he kind of glides through the midfield is impressive, to say the least. And I'm going to go James Maddison. I think Maddison is, I prefer him to Fernandez, just not prefer him, I guess. If I'm picking my team and the guys I want on my squad, I would rather have Maddison than Fernandez. Some of that is personality related. Go ahead, Janusz.
Okay, Janusz. So with Rodri, who else?
Yeah, I have the same, I think. Declan Rice and James Maddison. I think James Maddison is such a clever player. I almost think he's one of those players that, loves to thread that pass more even than scoring goals, right? I mean, he makes impossible situations look actually possible, and perfect fit, as he's shown, obviously, if he stays healthy and all that. Rodri, I don't think what else to say. I mean, the Liverpool game was actually a best example of how good he is, how he makes himself available, how he reads the game and understands who's in trouble and when, and how to tie that all together. I mean, he's not just a holding midfielder. He's just an all-around player that knows how to do just about everything on that pitch. And, as good as Bernardo Silva was in that game, and perhaps the man of the match for many, and I probably wouldn't argue too much, but I actually thought that Rodri was by far the most outstanding player in that game. The only reason I probably won't give it to him, because on that goal, and the camera didn't catch up, but I saw an angle. I think I can't remember who it was, but ran by him, and he could have stopped it the way Rodri does, and Fernandinho used to do for Manchester City, and Casemiro did for Real Madrid, that tactical foul, and he didn't do it. So maybe that one little mistake amongst the many great things that he's done, I wouldn't give it to him, but he's just a different level of a midfielder, the best in the world.
Talking about Rodri. All right, let's get the extra time question that we wanted to put to you. Erling Haaland, fastest to 50 goals in Premier League history. This was a question on extra time. This is not my question. It's one of our viewers. Is this his extreme talent, or could any striker of his quality do this in this City setup? I mean, it's interesting enough, Janusz, that they say any striker of his quality.
Exactly.
Look, I mean, he was doing it in Dortmund. He's doing it here. He's going to be doing it everywhere, because he's such a player that he's going to be playing on some of the great and the best teams in the world. That stat that you've mentioned, I think that just that little experience, if he learns that, he's going to be, I mean, he's already unplayable, but he will be. I think when you look at it,
when the stat that I mentioned, Janusz, you're talking about in the pre-game when we was talking about the chances missed and the
chances missed. And you know what?
Right. 14 goals scored.
Right. And you know what that is? Look, he relies on strength and power so much that if he just incorporates a little bit of finesse, when he takes a breather sometimes, everything is one pace, right? And that comes with time, with experience. And I think if he fixes that, all the goals that we're talking about, all the records, that's going to be chump change, because he's going to have to do it anyway. You have to learn it. And say he goes to Real Madrid, it's going to be a different tempo of the game, different way of playing, different build-up. So he's going to learn through the years, but also age is going to catch up with him, right? So if you want to stay at a certain level, you got to understand that sometimes you have to rest. Sometimes you can't power by people. And we often forget how young he still is. So I just think that these missed chances is that 1 second, that moment where you take a breather and say, do I have to power that? can I just slow down 1 second, right, to maybe get rid of that defender or maybe free somebody, the goalkeeper, whoever it may be. And it's that little finesse, that little culture that comes with time. But also I can understand him, right? I mean, if I was his size with the power and strength that he has at that age, I'd be probably doing the same thing, because he knows that if he takes off, I mean, you just can't keep up with him, right? So he's already got so many smarts in terms of where to be in front of goal. And we sometimes, I don't know if we make fun of him, but we point out how, oh, you know, some of these goals are tap-ins, but he's already intelligent enough to know where he's going to be. So he's always going to have goals, because he's going to be playing on the best teams in the world. And so I don't necessarily know if so-and-so was there. Look, if Harry Kane was there, yes, he would have been scoring those goals, maybe more. But, you know, how many years of experience does he have right now?
Yeah. You smiled, didn't you, Dalen, with the end of his quality line?
This is such a question of our like current sports media culture, like across the world. It's not just in America, but it's like picking apart. Like once they hit the certain pinnacle, we love to pick them apart. Giannis, in other sports, look at Giannis Antetokounmpo. He's the greatest guy in the world. Last couple of years, let's tear him apart. Jokic, he's going to get picked apart too.
Me, right?
It's fascinating. It's like, because it's not just of his quality. There's so few of his quality, and Janusz, you just touched on it. For him to have the movement and the intelligence to always be in that right spot, the timing for a lot of these times to not be offsides, like outside, that's a skill too. That's like that. You don't just magically appear in the right spot at the right time to make it a tap in or to make the right movement to peel off from a defender to score a goal. He's doing that consistently. He's done it at Dortmund, 89 goals in 86 games, 86 goals in 89 games. He almost was 1-for-1 goal ratio at Salzburg as well. He's basically at that right now, 50 and 48 in the hardest league in the world. Bear in mind, when he came here 2 summers ago, came to the Premier League, everybody was, of course, questioning, can he do it in the Premier League? And he lit the thing on fire. So yes, he's missed some chances that I mean, we would expect him to make for a striker of his quality. But at the same time, he's putting himself in these positions, he's scoring the goals, and he's done it at other stops. It's not just about City. So I feel like when you get to a certain echelon, we love to find a way to kind of pick holes in it versus just celebrating it. That's just part of our sports culture. But it's ludicrous. The dude's ridiculous. He's going to obliterate every role, every record in the Premier League. And then he may have years to move on because he's still so young.
Yes, being in the right place at the right time is a skill in itself. So make sure you're all in the right place at the right time tomorrow on Wednesday when we are back with the ESPN FC Live, and also Friday as well. Until then, until next time.